listening to episode 134 of Mitolife Radio. I'm Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Emma Sgourakis. Emma is a certified nutritionist based in Australia, and she actually co-founded the company Saturee with Kitty Blomfield. They sell really high-quality liver capsules that's freeze-dried, not desiccated, as well as casein, collagen, and gelatin. And when you open up their bottles, you could definitely tell that the sourcing is different. Over the last 5 years or so, I've watched the collagen market blow up at health food stores, and now they mix it with keto, and you have keto collagen and all of these different mixtures. And it's pretty much all the same stuff, and it has the same consistency. I often tell people, if you want to buy quality supplements, then you're not going to find them at your health food store. Because most health food stores, not all, but I would guess 99% of them, just want to increase their profit margin. And that usually means having on end caps ascorbic acid at eye level, omega-3s, like fish oil and algae oil, and cheap collagen products that usually have the word keto on the bottle to catch people's attention. Oh yeah, I heard about that on TV. It has to be good if it has the word keto on the product. So their supplements are unique, they're carefully sourced, and they're extremely high quality. But for the first half of this episode, we don't even talk about those. I ask her about her experience with pregnancy and preparing for it and what she's learned during that process. And a lot of the information, as she says, is counter to what's recommended to expecting mothers. So enjoy the show. Here is Emma Sgourakis. All right, we're here with Emma Sgourakis. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Well pronounced.
Thank you. Yeah, it coached me well. This is going to be a fun one. Before we started recording, you were talking about some things you learned during pregnancy and how that was a process of, I'd imagine, just kind of integrating information that you've learned, right, from Ray Pete and others about overall health. And
absolutely. I think I consciously tried to distance myself from the process a little bit. I mean, you help coach pregnant women and new mums for years, and then you go through the process yourself and realize, oh God, this is what it is to go through this, and how you're kind of treated like a sick person, even though I would assume to be pregnant, you're relatively healthy, but yeah, the way they want to test for everything and monitor everything, and it's quite bizarre. So I tried to keep at a distance somewhat, but I was lucky to have come across a certain level of intelligent learning, I suppose, for at least a few years previous to getting pregnant. So that's 10, 11 years ago now. So I think I made some major improvements to my hormones and my overall metabolism, which led me to have two really good pregnancies. But yeah, pretty fascinating to see what's recommended as opposed to what I ended up doing. It was quite a different thing.
Yeah, I was kind of unofficially coaching a friend in person. It was my friend Benny's wife. She's recently had a child, mm-hmm. and my information was like 180 from what they were being told by their, what's it called, OBGYN or whatever. Yeah. And yeah, it's like, was it folate, and they push omegas and sometimes iron, and like it's all the things that we speak against.
All the things. And also to that list they hand out and say, well, you're pregnant now, and these are all the foods you should not eat. Oh my God, some of the most nutritious foods you could eat. And you need to be eating so much more when you're pregnant and getting your nutrients up so much higher. And you encourage women to almost go on this level of sort of scarcity and fear over food. And then they actually end up probably eating less and less nutritious foods. And then when you're nursing, it's a whole another level, because you should be eating even more when you're nursing than when you're pregnant. But if you were to pick up any, women's magazine out there and you just had a baby, they're going to say, well, lose the baby belly and how to go on the post-baby diet, but you need to be eating up. It's a real commitment when you're nursing. So, yeah, the recommendations are really quite concerning. And the whole push for the whole gestational diabetes tests and the blood glucose tests, I was encouraged to have that later stage of my first pregnancy. And at the time, even knowing what you know, you still feel compelled because there's this pressure. It's just what's done kind of thing. You'll put your baby at risk if you don't. And I remember turning up for the test and I was having a bit of a baby brain day. And I sat down, they said, so you haven't eaten yet, you're fasting? And I said, oh God, I forgot, I ate breakfast because, that's a healthy instinct when you're heavily pregnant. So they sent me away saying, come back and do it again. And I thought about it and went, you know what? You're encouraging a heavily pregnant woman to fast, turn up for an appointment, very hungry, low blood sugar levels. And I knew in myself I had no signs of being even remotely diabetic. So the next time I saw my obstetrician, he said, you know what? You probably know more about nutrition than I do. You decide. You don't look diabetic to me. So I didn't bother. Not to say I'm discouraging women from having it, but you've got to question the validity if they can't go by symptoms first. And it really is a worry. You've got to be eating frequently. You don't want to have a pretty drastic drop in blood sugar levels when you're that pregnant.
Yeah. The obsession with blood glucose levels and insulin is really fascinating. Morley Robbins, that I've had on the show, says that in the 1950s, the mineral copper was like synonymous with insulin. And we've heard that potassium acts like insulin, but also copper. And so we already have two things besides the one that they're like hyper focusing on, which I think it's a bigger picture. It's like mineral balance, right?
Definitely bigger picture. And also too, they're looking at blood sugar ranges of the general population rather than a pregnant person. And it's been shown that a healthy pregnant woman should have naturally higher blood sugar levels anyway. So is their range needs to be changed regardless? Or are they just trying to diagnose every second pregnant woman with something else? It's a bit crazy. I was just a bit stubborn and did my own thing to the point that I'd actually never been a coffee drinker, because I was always in the realm of health. And, back then, well, coffee's not healthy, is it? That's what I used to think. But it was only after, I around the time of getting pregnant, I was getting pretty heavy into some research on coffee and caffeine and the benefits to lung development of the fetus and things like that. And it actually made me start drinking coffee as soon as I got pregnant, where most women are cutting out coffee when they get pregnant. And that's when I introduced it. Worked for me. But I think it's like anything, as long as you're getting enough fuel in, coffee can be a fantastic add-on. Perhaps it's those pregnant women who are already under-eating, already hypoglycemic. The coffee might give them the jitters, but it's like at any stage of life. Make sure you've got enough fuel and it can be a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm ever underslept, which we know, your blood glucose is kind of all over the place.
Oh, Matt, you just wait till you've got a baby around. You don't know what undersleeping is. You just wait.
I know. I need to up my vitamin E and red light and everything. But I'll take breaks off coffee, when that happens. And and I think waiting till your second meal, and there's all these different tricks people can do. I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, I wonder if most of the benefits of the coffee are the iron inhibition effects, like drinking it after a meal inhibits iron absorption. Like,
could well be.
I mean, I know there's so many things happening, but I think that people don't even know that. I think that's how the Starbucks drinkers are still doing well, relatively.
Probably. That's one bonus they're getting. But yeah, look, I think the analogy I use the most would be, it's like I think when you drink a good coffee, it's like you're driving a beautiful sports car and you put the pedal to the metal and you take up off the highway, and coffee can do that. It's a metabolic stimulator. It increases metabolism, which is a great thing. But if you don't have enough fuel in the tank, you'll damage the engine. So it's about, just being aware, have I eaten food this morning, or am I still coming off having fasted through the night, sleep, blood sugar levels at its rock bottom, cortisol's pushing high, and then you dump black coffee on that. Probably not a great idea. But if you've refueled and you've got some glycogen in your liver, then that's when you could get all the benefits of coffee without the downside.
Absolutely. Yeah. For 2 or 3 years, I was doing black coffee, like skipping breakfast. Did that for many years with stevia, and it tasted horrible, and it definitely increased my stress. And right now I'm drinking coffee. I do every interview, and putting collagen in it helps. I think if people would just add sugar, and people often say, just add fat to your coffee, MCT, the bulletproof thing. And I think that could help. But I think what helps more than adding fat to your coffee, like butter or something, MCT, is the sugar. And I like maple syrup.
Yeah, beautiful.
But, white sugar stirred in, and your collagen, I mean, you could make it close to a meal where you have like your macronutrients.
I think you're right. I don't like to call it a meal straight to clients, because sometimes I think, oh, that's good, I can get away with that breakfast, I'll just have collagen in my coffee. But it is getting close to a meal. You're ticking most of your boxes, aren't you? You get protein, fats, you've got sugars, you've got calcium. I mean, it's, it's making sense. It's going to tick more boxes.
I definitely notice more sustainable energy if I drink it after a meal, especially like a heavy meal. Just, I feel like it's a digestive aid too. So
definitely.
Yeah, we roast our own green coffee beans here.
No,
it's really good.
I want your life.
Yeah, it's fun. Learning how to make a good espresso and maintain the machine and all that, and all the little tools. It's a whole like hobby. It's really fun.
I know, it's far removed from the pods and whatnot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Worth the effort though.
Right. Totally. Did they recommend fish oil to you when you were pregnant? Or?
I'm pretty lucky. My obstetrician he didn't talk much about nutrition. I think maybe he saw what I did for a living and he didn't really breach the topic much. But look, if you spoke to anyone in the street and you said you're pregnant, that sort of thing was brought up, but I would just deflect it. And I purposely didn't read baby books and parenting books. I think I just instinctively felt like, you know what, everyone's going to have their own opinion, and regardless, I think it can set women up to feel like failures if they don't meet all these standards. I just took advice from my inner circle, I suppose. The only other one I did read up on, probably more so post-pregnancy, Tom Brewer's books are very good. He really brings that connection of, metabolic toxemia, late-stage pregnancy issues, and the importance of protein, but even more so salt. That's another one not widely talked about when you're pregnant. Make sure your salt's really high. So that was quite helpful, some of his work. But, I think the deeper I got into the whole pregnancy thing myself, I realised how little information there was out there that I really felt good about, which led me to, I wrote a couple of blog articles that are on my website during the time of going through pregnancy, when I was new to nursing and all of that. And that was me piecing together research that I'd collected myself going through it that I found was lacking out there, rather than just referring on an article I found. I couldn't find much. I was lucky to be in direct contact a lot with Ray Pete and an old friend of his that I've worked with for years now, Dodie Anderson. Do you know Dodie?
I haven't heard of her, no.
Yeah, she's wonderful. She's in her 80s herself, but she's been close friend with Ray for going on 30 years, I think. Worked with him for many years as well. And I found her through Rob Turner, Functional Performance Systems, Rob. Started doing coaching work with her way back, probably 19 years ago now. And since, stayed close friends with her, but she's a wealth of knowledge. And the funny thing was when I first came across Ray Pete's work, and I got in touch with, Rob Turner first and said, you seem to be onto this, I want some coaching on a practitioner level. And he was great. He's no filter, Rob. He just straight up said, okay, well, the thing is, you're female, I'm not female. Who am I to recommend advice to you if I'm not female? He's good friends with Dodie and put me onto her. And it was really good thrashing through ideas with her. But I just, I suppose not use myself as a guinea pig, but I suppose I was connected with my own symptoms myself, and I observed when I felt good and just went with that. And I played with natural progesterone, you know, used a fair bit of that as well when needed. But I think eating more frequently was a big part of it, making sure calories in general were up and listening to my cravings. I think we're discouraged to really go with our cravings. Almost in pregnancy, they make it out like pregnancy cravings are ridiculous and hilarious and just ignore them and push on. But I think there's wisdom to all of that. And my cravings were cheesecakes and milkshakes, and I think my body was telling me exactly what it needed.
And even ice cream, right? Because that's such a powerhouse nutrition.
Hugely. Oh, my God. Yeah. You need an ice cream machine on hand, definitely, when you're pregnant. 24/7 churning.
Yeah, unless you have, we're fortunate if you're in an area where you can get like healthier brands. Because I think Haagen-Dazs went downhill after a while. And,
I know. And sadly, even in Australia, I mean, we're known for our produce and high quality dairy and all of that, but you can't find an Australian brand without the gums at it. It's ridiculous. We were having to buy Haagen-Dazs because, I mean, bringing it over from America, it seemed crazy. So once you start making it yourself, it's pretty straightforward and pretty quick process, and it is worth doing. But there's definitely a niche for better quality ice cream brands out there.
For sure. Yeah. And even ice cream shops. I just found Dottie's blog. Is it Metabolist?
Yes.
Or she really,
Yeah, she hasn't done much. You'll see. I think that dates back to a long time. She hasn't done much online for a long time. She doesn't even practice that much these days. But she's fabulous. She's on the phone to Ray every week. They chat, and I think he helps her through health issues. She was told she'd go blind at a very young age, and with Ray's help, she's managed to keep her sight up until now. So he's constantly helping her experiment on new ideas and keep her sight going. So, yeah, she's got some great stories.
That's amazing. Yeah, Ray really turned me on to niacinamide and vitamin E for the eyes, which is contrary to where I was coming. It was like sun gazing and omega-3 was like my eye prescription for years. Yeah. It was like the opposite.
Opposite. How's your fish oil intake these days?
If I want to go crazy, I'll take a shot here and there to test my system. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we actually get some pretty decent fish up here, and we even have fish in our lake.
Wow.
I think they're relatively warm water, but I think I was telling someone the other day, like, people think the benefits of fish is the DHA, but it's really the protein and the minerals. Right?
I'd agree. Definitely the minerals. And some of the minerals you don't get with the land animals so much. I mean, more of your seleniums and trace nutrients. But, I mean, look, I think even perhaps the occasional bit of cold water fish, might not be that bad, particularly if you've got Matt's vitamin E. But it's also, too, what most, especially in Australia, they talk about Tasmanian salmon. It's all farmed. We don't get any wild salmon here at all, like just none. So it's marketed as being, the be all and end all of the health foods, and eat your salmon every week. But I got to speak directly with the fish farmers down there, and my God, it's not pretty. It's not pretty what they feed them.
I think they feed. Don't they feed them PUFAs pretty much?
Oh, yeah. Well, it started with, I wrote an article which brought to light some questions around certain so-called health foods, and salmon was mentioned in there, and I mentioned some of the things they feed them. And the next day I get a call from the head of Fisheries Australia, quite threatening, saying you need to retract that article and write something positive about our salmon. And I'm like, oh, okay, hit a nerve. And I said, well, if anything I've written is untrue, I want to know about it. Of course I'd want to, only put what's actually truthful. And he gave me the direct number to the head of the fish farm. So I chatted with him, lovely fellow, happy to chat and tell me everything. But everything I'd said was correct. So it was hydrolyzed chicken feathers. There were pellets with God knows what, mostly synthetic ingredients. They'd give them B-grade fish oil supplements to actually, put the omega-3 in them. They needed red pigment, otherwise they'd be grey, because they're not eating krill. They're not developing that pigment themselves. they're all really packed into these pens, no sunlight, no nothing, certainly not swimming upstream in beautiful Canadian rivers or anything. And then when I said to him, I hear that, they quite frequently use antibiotics with them. And he said, no, not every day. I was like, okay. And that was all of what they're fed. And it's just, it's what they're made up of.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. Adam Bergstrom, that I've had on the show multiple times, he's written a lot on yellow fat disease and lipofuscin.
Yes.
And he told me he's really fun. Yeah. And he told me about ethoxyquin, it's like a synthetic antioxidant developed by Monsanto that is used in the fish industry to prevent the fish meal from like lipid oxidation. And I guess according to Adam, I think it's like largely synthetic vitamin E.
Probably, yeah.
But it's just unbelievable. Like, I mean, I never imagined that they would be force feeding PUFAs in the fish food, to the fish that humans are eating. That's so diabolical.
Yeah. It's nuts, isn't it? But you wouldn't know unless you dug. I mean, it's certainly not going to be out there on the, on the label at the fish store.
Yep. Yeah. Better to probably catch them wild, right? And imagine rather than
wild or not at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you eat a lot of oysters during your pregnancy, or?
Yeah, look, I went by cravings, really. I ate oysters. We were lucky. We were living at Sydney at the time near the fish markets where the oysters are local and amazing and super fresh. And if I was ever concerned on freshness, I'd grill them. I'd, cover them in cheese and garlic and lovely things. And I certainly wasn't going to miss out on the benefits of shellfish. Yeah, I ate soft cheese and I don't want to say all the things I've given a bad impression. But I think you've got to think, I like to think in regards to just basic common sense. If you tell every pregnant woman out there that they shouldn't be eating oysters, they shouldn't be eating, slightly rare meats or fish or soft cheeses or raw dairy, it's kind of like assuming that for hundreds of years that every lady in Japan suddenly stopped eating high-quality sashimi when she was pregnant, or everyone in Switzerland with all their raw milk and raw cheese just stopped eating dairy completely when they were pregnant. It just makes no sense to me. I think it's about being discerning, obviously, with quality and freshness, but everyone should be discerning, not just pregnant women. No one should probably eat the sushi from the supermarket that's been sitting around, pregnant or not. It's just, I just think common sense has kind of left the building, hasn't it? It's, and take a bit of responsibility, but just, if you do have concerns about the freshness of the oysters, for example, sure, grill them or make something out of them. Maybe don't avoid them altogether.
Is the fear like parasites? Because I know that's, I mean, I was responsible for pushing that as a former vegan, and I think they're real. I think people should have some sort of a strategy. Eating raw oysters can be dicey. I mean, I've cracked open hundreds, and I've seen some pretty wild things inside of the shell.
Yeah, absolutely. But look for that. But
right.
Yeah, perhaps cook it or something else. But I think we should all be concerned about parasites, not just pregnant ladies. But to think just to think of the good that can be gained from oysters is one of those foods that is just, you can't really compare. Shame not to be getting those sort of nutrients in, unless you're going to be really diligent about a hell of a lot of other shellfish to make up for it, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But it's an interesting topic, and it's a real minefield for pregnant ladies out there. It's just the rules slapped on them and the encouragement for all these tests, and really quite invasive tests too.
Where they have to like go in there with machines and stuff, or
machines.
The Matrix.
They want to test for everything, and when they inject you right into the fetus too, and that comes with a risk in itself. But the stress alone of having to weigh up all these things, I mean, you don't want to make a pregnant woman stressed. I mean, that's a surefire way to not have a complete and healthy pregnancy. But I remember my mum observing me when I was going through it, and she went, "Oh my God," she goes, "back in my day, you either got pregnant or you didn't. And then you went through pregnancy. You might have had one scan at the end to have a little look in. And then you had a baby. You didn't know what it was. And that was just, given it was a different time when they were probably younger and less things affecting them. But, it wasn't quite so invasive."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's so many things like suppressing the immune system. Like EMFs, possibly heavy metals, stress, as you mentioned, cortisol, right, lowers the immune system function. Are you a fan of like home births? Do you think that's often a better way to go?
I think it really depends on the individual and what you feel comfortable with. I think if you feel comfortable with that and you've got the right support around you and everything about your pregnancy is looking spot on, then sure, go for it. But at the same time, especially when I was going through it for my first time, I realized what a profound thing it is you're going through and how you've never been through this before. Your body's never done this before. There's so many unknowns. There's so many variables. And look, 100, 200 years ago, a lot of women died in childbirth. And I do think having a bit of help around you and some professionals who've done this before, why not? That's a good thing too. I wasn't going to put my hand up and just say, I'll just hang out at home and do it myself. And I'm very glad I didn't, because with both my pregnancies, I'm not ashamed to say it, but I had to have C-sections. I was, I'm a very small frame myself, small pelvis. I got to 42 weeks with both my pregnancy. There was no shift in my pelvis. There was no give whatsoever. My stomach just kept going outward. There was nothing was going down. My babies were up under my ribs. I was textbook for a stillbirth. And even my obstetrician, who I chose deliberately because he was so pro-natural labour, and I sought him out for that reason, he said to me, "Look, I'd love to go through this experience, whatnot, but at the moment we've got to think of the safety of yourself and your child. And, you've got all the hallmarks that if we didn't have any other intervention, you'd very high-risk stillbirth, or even my own safety was really compromised." And I trusted him on that, and we waited as long as we possibly could. Both of them came out in 3 minutes. It was over, but it was very interesting, especially my first one. Apparently I had more than 2 litres of fluid left in the sac, and apparently you've got to get down to less than half a litre before you would naturally go into labour anyway. And the midwife who yanked my daughter out said, well, if you'd waited for that to occur, it would have been at least another 6-8 weeks for that amount of fluid to really subside. So, I'm grateful that my babies came out perfectly healthy, and, I was fine too. And I think there's reasons that we have this kind of, technology or options these days, because, otherwise it wasn't looking good for me. I don't think I'm somewhat built for birth. I'm quite fine. And my babies were both large, and I was mentioning to you before, they both had very large head circumferences. And when Olive, my daughter, was pulled out of me, I remember the woman saying, "Oh my God, you would have needed to be married to get that out of you naturally." And I'm certainly not built like a Maori. But so certainly, if it's all looking good for you and you want to go through home birth, I would do it. But I'd always probably just have a fallback plan close at hand, need be. You just don't know it. It's just an unknown, this whole process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's amazing. I think it's a little bit easier to be a man. There's less of that to think about. And,
but you get man flu. It's really tough.
Right. Have to stay fertile, right, and keep the copper.
That's a big responsibility. And then you've got to cook for your wife when you spat out a child, and rub her back and support her.
Right. Yeah, I was telling my friend when she was before she had her baby, like, focus on the fat soluble vitamins. I think those are often overlooked, like especially K2. Like, Weston A. Price, that was looking at the dentition of wild humans, and he saw that their jaw structure and their teeth grew in perfectly. I'd say like half or more of the kids that I grew up with needed braces or
Yeah.
headgear, and
Crowded teeth. Yep.
I think that's preventable. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, looking at, and I think too, there's definitely something to be said for, preconception care and thinking of it, if you can, I mean, years before, but even beyond that, it goes right back to your health as a child. It goes right back to your mother's health. Apparently it goes as far back as your grandmother's health. And it's when, and I get this a lot, I'll have a client come to me and say, oh my God, I'm pregnant. So what do? I need to make a healthy child, and what should I start doing differently, and how should I eat better? And you don't want to say it out loud, but you sort of go, well, you've already created the baby. It's going to grow now, but the best work you can do is leading up to, of course, once you're pregnant, it's important to eat well as well. But yeah, it does go a long way back, and the choices we've made, throughout our entire life really do, culminate when it comes to how healthy your child's going to be. But I think if nothing else, we've just got to keep very much well fueled and, not erring on the side of lack. We've just got to eat enough. But it's been ingrained in females to be hesitant about, really eating and really fueling our bodies. Everyone's a bit more concerned about too many calories, but most women out there just are under eating systemically.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I'm a pretty heavy promoter of red light devices, maybe because I'm, not at the equator. It's useful, especially for me. And I've had pregnant women reach out and say, is this safe, for pregnancy, red light therapy? And I'm like, is the sun safe?
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely more of that.
As long as they're not cooking, maybe like, right on it.
Yeah. Yeah. All those things. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Did you utilize that, or have you?
Yeah. I always had a red light around. Look, I'm not very, with all those things, I'm not very terribly structured. I sort of go by feel, but yeah, if I was lying in bed reading a book, I use my red light as my book light. So why not have it near your belly? I would notice a bit more kicking and tossing and turning with it. I think that was perhaps showing that was they liked it. But I think anything that's going to reduce stress in any way is beneficial to making a child.
Mm-hmm. So before we started recording, you were saying you like coach women that are looking to get pregnant and looking into the things that we've been talking about. Like,
yeah, I think infertility is a growing concern these days, definitely.
What do you think are the main causes of that?
Perhaps being on the pill for 10, 15 years without a break. That's definitely a big one. And there's a lot of that out there. I think GPs hand out scripts for it like they're sweets. It's just sort of without stopping to check in on blood pressure or anything. It's just convenient. It's become too convenient for women just to take it, or perhaps they just see their skin being a bit clearer. So it's, it's attractive that way too. But that culmination of estrogen in their system is not conducive to gestation, clearly, or allowing more progesterone to occur in them. So I think that's a biggie. I don't think it's so much about, they've left it to an older age. I think a healthy woman should be able to get pregnant, no problem whatsoever, in her 40s. But perhaps they've been putting career first and overstressing and not realizing they were just running on cortisol for a very long time. Definitely have a history of restrictive diets. Absolutely. They'd cut out the foods that were rich in things like, for example, like you talk about fat soluble nutrients and vitamin A. Dairy is suddenly the devil, and only an egg here or there, and they certainly don't eat offal or liver. I don't think much about how they've been living through their 20s and maybe their 30s is very helpful for setting up, for pregnancy.
Yeah, I've had a few episodes, maybe 2 or 3 on birth control, and it's so like evil because
it's terrible.
like you mentioned that it's an exogenous source of estrogen, but also iron. Like there's a crazy amount of iron in each pill, and that's just such a horrible 1-2 punch that's, contributing to really every issue. I mean, there's almost no process that excess iron and estrogen won't
That's not
touch and
not a good
right?
combination. And leading up to that, I think another thing, you would hear it a lot too, but often if a woman goes to a doctor for help and, she's feeling exhausted, they talk about fatigue. First things first, even before they've done any level blood test, is this assumption that, you must be low in iron. It's a female thing. Take the iron, or, iron supplementation, the worst kind. And then perhaps even if they did a blood test, as blood levels of iron alone isn't a way to decipher if it's true iron deficiency. That's a whole nother conversation. And then even iron injections throughout pregnancy, the list goes on. But if you can resurrect your progesterone productions before pregnancy, it's a very good thing. And try to clear the body of stored excess estrogen. It would be number one.
Yeah, the progesterone thing, I think, is really key. I still hear, leaders, quote unquote, in the natural health community talking about estrogen as the female hormone, like, all these soy boys with their estrogen.
Yeah. It's been very well marketed, hasn't it? The more estrogen, the better, really. So the pill's fine, and the pill's actually beneficial or preventative to other things. It's quite the opposite. Really concerning. And you see it more. I mean, this estrogen dominance. I'm having mothers send their 13, 14, 15-year-old daughters to see me too, because the more they learn about estrogen dominance, the more they see the signs in, their young daughters. Even girls younger than that, girls getting their periods when they're 7 and 8. It's all coming on way too early, and perhaps they're being born estrogen dominant, from their estrogen dominant mothers. It's something that we need to look into and help younger kids be, protected from as well.
That's wild. I've never heard that women can be born estrogen dominant from their mothers, and that makes total sense. The mother passes down so much, and I think that's maybe where progesterone supplementation, because people are like, bioidentical progesterone, it's dangerous, it'll, all these myths, like it'll shut down your own production, but it won't. I mean, I recently put up a YouTube on my Mitolife Academy of progesterone cream and how and why I use it and what brand and stuff. And from all my research I've done on it, I mean, Ray and others, William Wong has written a little bit about it. It's so safe. I just rub it on after I shower once a day, and maybe some DHEA as well. But I really feel it. Like it's like a stress buffer.
I see it as probably one of the most protective, calmative, anti-stress molecules that we could manufacture or be exposed to. When it's true, natural, identical, progesterone, absolutely. And if anything, it's been shown to increase your own internal production of progesterone. So it certainly doesn't come in and then make a woman's ovaries lazy or anything like that. It actually, it's kind of like it comes in, it reminds the ovaries, okay, this is what you want them to make at this time of your cycle, mimic this. And then over time, they need less and less of it supplementally. It's like they've switched on their production again. But if anything, I see it as something that, like going back years, if I had a new female client, I was always trying to fixate on food first. You can do most of it, just with a good diet. You shouldn't need too many supplements. All good and well. And I think if you are living in some remote village, not exposed to all the junk that we're exposed to, then perhaps that's possible. And if the food was perfect, but we're bombarded by so much stress now, and estrogen's coming at us left, right, and center. And on top of that, if I've had 10 years of accumulated estrogen supplementation and it's stored in their tissue, I can't see how just a nice looking diet will be enough. It's got to be definitely lifestyle changes, but to create that progesterone dominant state, especially through their luteal phase, to come at it with a hit of natural progesterone, you're going to overcome that estrogen dominance far more quickly, and then get more benefit from all the efforts you're putting into your diet and your lifestyle and all the other stuff. If you're, you've got to think of all the phytoestrogens, the xenoestrogens, it's in the water supply, it's everywhere, and we're storing it. And then when we're stressed, we make more of it, and our fat tissue can make it. And it's like we're just saturated in estrogen. So I actually now tend to find, I start with a female client. I've read her history and I've gone, okay, estrogen dominance, tick, 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 tick. And even before we start talking about food, I'm like, okay, get the progesterone in the male. Let's get it on its way. Let's talk about the diet. Let's try and clear the estrogen. Let's talk about the antiseptic fibers, and let's talk about the other things we can do to help remove it. But we sort of need to jam some in there and sort of support the body through this and overcome it more quickly.
Yeah, you mentioned the antiseptic fibers, and I started on the raw carrot salad several years ago, and just wanted to touch on that for a minute, because bamboo shoots are also helpful, and I just wonder, like other types of fiber, let's say like a salad. I know there's their own, green leafy vegetables have their own issues, especially depending on the state of someone if they're extremely compromised. But is it like, why specifically the raw carrot and the bamboo shoots? It's because they're less susceptible to.
Yeah, so they're non-fermentable fiber. They're unique in that way. The other one I'd add to that list is well-cooked mushrooms. They all have a similar type of fiber, which when you think about it, where a carrot grows, where a mushroom grows, where bamboo grows, it tends to be kind of moist, damp, dark, under the ground, or it's the perfect scenario for, I suppose, mold to grow. But to think that these things thrive in that environment and they don't get affected by mold, that's just my visual anyway, but kind of makes sense that in our system, if there's a overgrowth of bacteria, endotoxin, and other stuff going on in the upper small intestine where that should be predominantly sterile, that can help to collect that, move it along, and it's not affected by that. Whereas your other roughage from, green leafies and other things like that. I mean, think of a bag of salad greens that you left in the fridge for too long. They go putrid really quickly. So they are quite quickly fermentable. So all those three fibers are very good at doing that. The carrot was the one that was the study done against a group doing penicillin, and it had similar antibacterial benefits, but without the other downside that perhaps penicillin could bring, when used long term. The mushrooms I really like too, because they're in itself, they've got the ability to be aromatase inhibitors as well. They can be an antihistamine. But yeah, just very good at helping lower serotonin in general. And, easy to eat. The thing with the carrot, you want to keep it raw. You want to grate it. If you can be bothered, it's good to rinse it, squeeze out the excess beta carotene. The mushrooms, you want to boil them at least 1 hour up to 3 hours. There's a naturally occurring toxins there that can affect the liver. You can make soup out of them, or just, saute them up and have them with your meals. And the bamboo, it's good you can use the canned ones as long as you rinse them and boil them. You can blend them up into it's a horrid mushy pulp, but it really does the job as well. So going between these three substances, they can be really, really helpful. And ideally on an empty stomach, they work the best between meals when the pathways sort of open and they can do their job. But it's pretty fascinating over the years. I've seen people, once they really do get diligent with one or all three of these, that's when they start to see the difference, particularly hormonally as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, if I ever have something going on, my stomach's not feeling good, if I get a raw carrot in me, I feel so much better so quickly within like 10 minutes.
Oh, my favorite thing with all of this whole topic on nutrition and helping people with their health is when you can see the most phenomenal benefits with the simplest things. The carrot that's already in the fridge, or the bag of salt that's already in the pantry, or the bicarb, it's just, I love it when you can play with these so-called benign, simple substances and they have the most profound effect. It's really quite, I find it quite liberating. It doesn't have to be that superfood from across the world. It's get the basics right. You can do so much with the basics.
Yeah, that's why I love what you and Kitty are doing with Saturee, because people can do just the supplements, but it's not until they do the right supplements, cut out the wrong ones, and then have the foundation to back it all up. And that's where they really see advanced results. Like that's why I started my supplement company, because they absolutely changed my life. And I don't think I could have kind of recovered my brain from the assault that I had the first 20 years of my life on it without proper supplementation, especially minerals. But I wanted to ask you about the carrot. Like, the reason why you grate it is to increase the surface area, right? But I was just thinking the other day, like, don't we chew it up anyway?
I agree with you on that. But I'd read the validity to even getting a peeler and peeling these long strands, these long ribbons, because what was the wording? Preserve the longitudinal fibers or something. And yeah, like the surface area, like you said. But the thing is, once you chew it up in your mouth, it's going to get broken up, isn't it? And I think I mentioned, probably my biggest clientele are time poor, busy mothers juggling businesses, and, they don't have much time on their hands. And I say, if you get towards the end of the day and you go, shit, I haven't had my freaking carrot salad, rather than beating yourself up, I mean, that's a stress in itself. Don't do it. Grab a carrot, eat the carrot. While you're running around cooking everyone's dinner, eat a freaking carrot. It's still got to be good. And like you said, you feel that difference straight away, don't you? Just grab a carrot and eat the carrot. Perhaps if someone's got really impaired liver function, they see that, the skin going a bit orange and the calluses going a bit orange, and they see that build up a bit of carotene, that's, I think, where it really is worth grating it first, rinsing it, squeezing out that beta carotene, take that extra step, or keep some grated carrot in the fridge, soaking in water, slowly leaches that beta carotene, squeeze it out when you need some. But if that's not so much your issue, just, eat the damn carrot. Because you know what, then it's there's no excuse not to, and you're not going to waste that time going, oh, I'm a failure, I forgot that again. It's just, keep it simple.
I love it. Yeah, I agree with that. And same thing with like liver capsules, right? If someone can't find good liver, or they're super busy, like, I find the liver capsules are just really convenient, and people think you lose a lot, or nutrients are denatured, or it's even harmful. I've heard that, but I think there's a lot of fear tactics, I think, against supplements. People say, "Oh, it's just another thing being marketed or whatever."
So right. And this is a battle we had probably for a year or two. Well, your listeners would know Kitty already, would they? Yeah. Kitty Bonfield, yeah. Mm-hmm. As you know, she can be quite persuasive in your face. That's she and I work together, and we're like yin and yang. That's why we work together so well, I think. She's hilarious. But she was on my back for years, because she has what she does, she runs big programs, with a lot of, hundreds of clients at once. So she does more the program approach, I suppose. Mine's more one-on-one. So I'm dealing with one person at a time, 3 months at a time. So different approach. But she would get all these women all at once, where she'd say to them, you need to eat liver. You just got to get onto the liver. And she'd hear time and time again from these women who'd say, either I can't buy it fresh enough, or I can't stand it, makes me gag, or I just don't have the time, or I'm just not going to do it. And she'd hear it over and over again, and she'd be at me saying, Emma, we've got to find a way to make liver easier, or we've got to get capsules or some form. We've just got to do it. And I'd be that anal perfectionist there going, no, Kitty, they've just got to suck it up. They've just got to eat the liver. But it actually wasn't till I went through pregnancy, sleep deprivation, becoming a mother, that I realized, oh God, no, I can't fathom it right now. Or I'm, I've got a bit of an aversion to that food right now in early stage pregnancy, or I'm just not going to do it. I started to get that they weren't just excuses. But one day she broke me down, and I went, okay, I get it. We've got to find a backup form of liver that's as good as, the closest thing we can get to being as good as fresh liver. So I had my stringent short list, as I do, with, if we're going to do this, it's got to be the best we can. So we accessed Australian liver. We were happy with the source of the Australian liver. It had to be grass-fed and all of that. It had to be freeze-dried. And I had to, really learn about the intricacies of the freeze-dried approach. We get encapsulated ourselves. There's no other fillers and no flow agents. There's nothing. And just in a gelatin capsule. So we came up with something that we couldn't find a product that ticked all those boxes, at least within Australia. So that's why we did it. Otherwise, I would have just referred people to a product, but we didn't feel good about any of them. And then that opened the floodgates to the 3-4 other products we've since done. We only ever made things that we couldn't source ourselves at a certain quality. Otherwise, we weren't going to bother doing it. If it's already been done, why do it? The casein was an interesting one too. We literally couldn't find casein in Australia that was just plain casein. No safflower oil, no nothing. Kind of blew my mind that it was so unavailable. So we had to make that too. Yeah, interesting. But that's been our challenge, was just to actually find simpler products, not more complex products, and that they were 100% transparent in what's in there, and there was nothing else.
I love it. Yeah, the first time I opened your bottle of liver capsules, I smelled it, and it didn't have like that gamey smell. I've tried like 4 or 5 different other brands of beef liver capsules, and I could just smell immediately, my first smell of the bottle, that this was different sourcing. And yeah, whenever a woman reaches out with like, fears or concerns about iron anemia, I tell them, if you're worried about it, just, beef liver capsules are the real thing, and Shilajit, because they both contain iron, but also copper to help regulate it. It's all in the proper form and natural and whole food and everything. So
absolutely. And this is the thing about iron, like you said, there are times some women do need a bit of iron. It's not always bad, but why go for the ferrous iron in the supplement or the injection when in nature you do not find iron in isolation anywhere, do you? It's always going to be balanced with copper. It's going to be literally thousands of other cofactors there. So find your food source iron, and liver being better than the muscle meat, because you do have more of the minerals. And then on top of that, if they still felt they were lacking, then couple it with fresh orange juice, amp up the absorption with a bit of extra vitamin C. So there's always better things you can do if you truly do need more iron than just resort to an iron supplement.
And with the casein, I have yours. I haven't honestly used it much because I don't make like shakes or anything. I'm still trying to figure out how to work it in. I know Kitty's does like ice cream recipes, and she puts it in there.
We made a whole recipe book of ideas of how to implement the casein, and it's something that not everyone needs, but for me, what got us started on looking into it was a study out of the Netherlands, which is really quite interesting, and they found that increasing, even though it was a country which already aren't scared of dairy and they eat cheese and there's already casein, but when casein in particular was elevated something like 25%, definitely more so into the evening, they experienced high metabolic rate through the night, and it offset nighttime stress in particular, which I found really interesting. Increased fat loss, generally more satiated, and it was really quite pronounced, the observations of this study. And so I started looking into it mainly for clients who, were chronic insomniacs in particular, thinking they've obviously got high stress through the night. Anyway, so we did a round of it, just thinking, well, let's just get it alone for our clients and just see if perhaps the insomniacs do well with it. And I'm still to this day amazed by like the testimonials we get from it are fascinating. They shock me every day. We get emails on a daily basis from people who say things like, I've been insomniac for 20 years and I put some casein in my hot chocolate at night and I'm out. And they've been doing the hot chocolate previous to that, which helped a little bit, but with the casein made all the difference. So yeah, pretty interesting. And I myself find, which, touch wood, apart from babies waking me through the night, I've had no issue with sleep. But now if I don't have hot chocolate with casein before bed, I notice that my sleep quality is just not good at all. It's, in comparison, I don't feel I sleep as heavily. You wake a bit more easily. But it's pretty interesting stuff. So I think if you already eat a lot of cheese and milk, perhaps, it's not essential for you, but pretty interesting how, the muscle preservation through the night too is particularly interesting because it's such a slow digesting protein, and usually muscle degradation happens at night more than any other time of the day, but having that casein preserves the muscle better. Anyway, so that was, interesting to go down that rabbit hole with casein.
Have you had clients mix it into their ice cream just to like boost it even more?
Yeah, mix in ice cream. You can make really good pancakes out of it. Put in chocolate brownies, and because it's just quite a simple fairly tasteless powder. You can add it into cooking quite easily.
Cool. I'm going to start experimenting with it. I like your product pages. That's kind of like my Mitolife ones. Like it's pretty in depth. You have a study that casein has been shown to have direct anti-stress effects, lower cortisol.
Yeah. And if I don't know if you see, there's also, we've got a blog there. I've done articles on each product we brought in. If you want to look at further studies, I've got all the links there. And just basically it's all my reasoning for the products we brought in. You know, they have to have real reason to be there. So that's, you know, the collection of information as to why we honed in on the products that we found.
That's awesome. Yeah, I also love the collagen. I've tried maybe 4 or 5 different brands and they were okay, but yours was the only one I've ever found that had like a soft, kind of like powdery consistency to it.
Yeah, it dissolves really easily, doesn't it?
It's not like grainy like all the other ones I've tried.
Yeah. Well, Kitty was clever to find that before we even started Saturee. She'd sourced that through contacts within the industry who they at the highest level had said, this is the quality we use. We often sell this other B grade one, but this is the quality they all personally use and they know their product. And it was out of Germany, whereas a lot of them come out of Brazil. Not to say the Brazilian ones are bad, but it sounds like the little technology out of Germany is just that much better. I used to recommend, there's, you know, Great Lakes and things like that, which good to a point, but there was a period of time where I got a lot of clients coming back saying that product's giving me horrendous gut ache, inflammatory issues I was noticing. There was talk perhaps some silica leaked into a batch, and so I don't know what other flow agents and things they use, but ours uses, no flow agents or anything like that. There's no other fillers. So maybe that's, you know, sees the digestibility improved. And yeah, the results speak themselves. We've gathered so many interesting and really impressive testimonials from it, and people seem to be coming back for more of it. So it seems to be a really good one. And it's made from the hide, which I think is positive as well. Some of them grind up bone and you get more of the histidine, potential histamine reactions from more heavy metals seem to accrue, more of the glyphosate. So from what we've learnt, the hide products out of Europe tend to be the better ones.
And gelatin that you guys sell, that's just cooked collagen, right?
Yeah, so gelatin, I suppose, is somewhat less processed, you know, straight from the collagen, straight from the ligaments and the hide and tendons. So you can use it more so for cooking up your gelatinous treats and things. You do have to bloom it first, and we talk about the process even on our packaging, where you just sprinkle your gelatin over a bit of fluid first and let that suck up all the fluid before you need to apply heat to fully dissolve it. But then you can literally make jelly, or you call jello, don't you? Make marshmallows and panna cottas and gummies and all sorts of things from it. So if you want to get creative in the kitchen. And then the hydrolyzed collagen is further broken down so that it can be dissolved in cold liquids, but at the same time it doesn't gel as such. But they both have much of a muchness in their benefits. They're just two different forms. The gelatin we managed to source is the highest grade bloom available, whereas your generic stuff in the store, from what I've learned, is a much lower grade bloom. So you don't even need that much, and it gels really. It's quite rubbery, which is great. So you don't need too much of it. But yeah, I've seen differences over the years. I don't know if you've worked with people who've played between using gelatin as opposed to hydrolyzed collagen. Some do so much better with the collagen. Some do so much better with gelatin. And I do recommend everyone play within yourselves and see what benefits you gain, you know, whether your gut takes to one better than the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think some people are really sensitive to glutamic acid or glutamate.
Yeah.
Like toxicity is a thing.
Yeah.
Like I think it depends on like how compromised someone is, right? How they react to different things.
Absolutely. And again, I would look at the source of the gelatin for that, and the differences in percentage of that do make a difference. But yeah, definitely how their gut function is, hydrochloric acid secretion, whether they're breaking down peptides into amino acids very efficiently. I think all those things definitely have a play at it. And even like bacterial overgrowth, some people who are quick to use collagen and might say that they bloat from it, for them I'd say, look into SIBO and whether that's an issue for you, something you need to work on and help disinfect your intestines. But also make sure with any kind of powder products that you dissolve them completely. It might even mean for super sensitive people, it's worth dissolving your collagen with a splash of hot water from the kettle first and see that it's super clear, there's no crystals left, then add it to whatever. So, yeah, just make sure that it's not entering into your intestine still intact and bacteria can, have a party.
I can relate to that. Yeah, the last batch I made, I couldn't find yours, and so I used, I think it was like Great Lakes. There's another one, and it really messed me up. I don't know if it's because I accidentally boiled it, the Jello mixture, but I had like really bad stomach ache enough where I just threw out all of it. I was like, this is making me sick. It's all going in the trash. But the good news is the move here. We moved here 3 months ago, and I was pretty much living on homemade gummies that I made from your gelatin. Just because, with moves, even if it's nearby or whatever, it's a lot of stress and it's not a lot of time to make food. And
no, everything's packed up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I just had like 2 containers of your gummies and they're so dense. I think I calculated one of my squares was like 11 grams of protein. Like that's pretty good.
Yeah. It yields a good rubbery finish, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think it's sort of, I see the convenience of the collagen. You chuck it in your coffee, chuck it in everything. It doesn't taste like anything, and it's quick. There's nothing to do. But yeah, again, I sort of like to incorporate the things that would sit in your pantry, become part of your cooking, and integrate into your food. Like I even like to bloom and dissolve a hunk of gelatin that I might add into a bolognese sauce I'm making for the kids, or just get it into food, because I think that's how we incorporated gelatin into our days. If we're living back in the village, it was our food was gelatinous. So, ideally we should all be eating gelatinous stews and soups all the time, but they take time and they can be laborious. And in the middle of summer, you might not feel like another soup or a stew. So I think that's where, a bit of gelatin to make some nice cold jelly is a good way to do it. But yeah, I think everyone could do a bit more gelatinous elements into their food.
Yeah, I started really upping my bone broth. I think I heard it from Ray first, the inflammatory, non-inflammatory amino acids. And that's why I think the carnivore people are kind of off base, not only for not incorporating carbohydrates, but just the really high tryptophan and cysteine content.
Muscle meat.
Inflammatory. Yeah, like only muscle meat diet.
Only
that's like
meat.
So harsh.
Absolutely. It's a real concern. And we never ate that way again. We wouldn't have wasted all the parts of the animals and just ate the lean fillet steak. We were eating all the bits. They threw the head in, everything. And, doesn't the collagen makes up, 50% of the entirety of an animal? Whereas when you hone in just on muscle meat, it's far lower than that. So I know you need to balance that, all that tryptophan and cysteine, with a bit more glycine and proline, definitely, and either eat all the gelatinous cuts and get that naturally occurring balance, or inject a bit of extra gelatin, have some gummy bears after your steak. Really important. But one thing on that too, I'm not a fan of when people say, how do you cook your bone broth and how much bone broth did you have? And I'm actually not a fan of bone broth per se, because I don't think the bones are where it's at. I think it is the tendons, the ligament, the hide, the skin, the cartilage. And if you're boiling raw bones, if that's literally how you're making it, you probably need to simmer it for 12, 24 hours to extract any amount of gelatin. But anything beyond 3-4 hours is you're really getting quite oxidized nutrients. If you use the right cuts, 3 to 4 hours max should cut it, and that's all you want to cook it for. So maybe if you're not getting a really rubbery gelatinous yield once it's cooled down in the fridge, question the cut you're using as opposed to how much longer should I boil my bones. And also bones, once you cook them beyond 8 hours or so, particularly if you start to detect that just really subtle, metallic kind of taste. I mean, that's heavy metal starting to leach. You're going to have more of the histamine release from the bones as well. So, yeah, I'd sort of say 3 to 4 hours tops, and use the gelatinous cuts. And even beyond that, don't even just make broth. Why not use a whole cut with the meat there as well, where you get a whole lot of gelatin and you get meat. You actually get a meal out of it. I don't want to sit around just drinking watery broth all day. I want an actual meal. So why not kill 2 birds and have the meat as well as all the gelatin?
Those are really good points. Yeah, for some reason, I feel a lot better with chicken bone broth versus beef. And
I agree.
Last year, especially in the winter, I was doing a lot of just steak with a cup of bone broth, and that felt really good in my system. And maybe, a root beer or something, some sugar.
Well, yeah, and chickens too. I've been doing a lot lately where I just get a whole heap of, a few dozen chicken wings and chicken wing tips and that sort of thing. It only takes a good 2.5 hours, but my gosh, the broth is, you can pick it up you can hold it, and super tasty. Brown it off a little bit first and add your carrot and onions and whatnot, but incredibly restorative and feels so good on the gut. Absolutely. If you can cool it down and then skim off your poofa-rich fat before eating it, that's even better. But, there's not even that much on chicken wings anyway. But I totally agree. I think chicken wings, there's something to be said for that therapeutic effect of chicken soup. Although in saying that, there was a time where they'd still use the chicken necks that had the thyroid attached. And now they're pulling out all the thyroid glands and all allowed to have your thyroid-rich stock. It's criminal.
You just have to throw like a Cinnamel tablet in there.
Yeah. This is a crazy thing because I got to a point where I was noticing even in Australia it was getting harder and harder and harder to buy thyroid of any kind. And you have that many clients where you see it in them and you go, oh, God, they do so well for a hit of T3, but you literally couldn't get it anymore. And, I was reading into the thyroid gland in the chicken neck. And so I called the butcher and he's like, oh, yeah, no, there's no thyroid in there. We don't get them with thyroid. So I called the chicken farmers and the organic chicken farmers and said, can I buy chicken necks or whole chickens from you with a thyroid attached? They said, no, by law, we have to remove them all, either dispose them or the pharmaceutical companies, buy them from them. So it's this crazy cycle where they sell it to the pharmaceutical company. They make the thyroid. We've got to try and access the thyroid from Mexico and put it back out. So it's nuts. And we need it more than ever these days. They would have had their chicken soup 100 years ago would have been incredibly therapeutic, amazing food. I mean, it's still good now with all the glycine, but it lacks the thyroid. It would have been in the sausages. It would have been everywhere.
That's a really great point. I think a mutual friend of ours is Keith Littlewood. I've had him on the show a few times. Tomo, yeah, and we did a whole show on like thyroid supplementation. He really convinced me because some people think it's not necessary. It could cause harm easily, but I think if you have the foundation down, a little bit of T3,
absolutely, definitely foundation. It doesn't work, or it can actually incur stress if you don't have enough fuel coming in. Absolutely, but if you've got all that right and you're still really struggling. When I was at my wit's end trying to figure out, well, how the hell do we get some supplemental thyroid if all our sources here are so limited? I even emailed Ray Pete at the time and I put it to him and said, if we can't get it from Mexico, if we can't, get a supplement over the counter here, if you can't get it in your chicken soup, do you really think perhaps with other elements we could get away without using thyroid in this day and age? And knowing Ray, he's quite blunt and to the point with his answers, and his email back to me was just no. Oh God, I'm screwed. But I mean, in saying that, I think keep up the other elements, some coconut oil, sugar, aspirin, orange juice, milk. I mean, it's a bit of thyroid in milk. Be diligent on all those fronts, absolutely, and limit external stresses however you can. But I think it's something that if you can find a source or find an open-minded doctor who could perhaps prescribe a little bit of natural desiccated or a little bit of T3 here and there at times, it would only be helpful.
Yeah, I tried natural desiccated. It was like beef liver with with like 30 milligrams
Oh,
of
I
beef
think I know the one you
thyroid.
mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've never felt, I mean, I think I
Um,
took like 8 capsules at once, and I never ever felt it compared to the synthetic
nah.
thyroid.
And
It
you know
was
what?
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that product, there's so little thyroid in that anyway, isn't there? It's just loaded with liver.
Right. Yeah. It's, I remember hearing Ray, I think it was on One Radio Network, Patrick Timpone, and this is one of my favorite things I've ever heard from him. Patrick was asking him, he's like, wouldn't the desiccated thyroid supplement be better than the synthetic? Like, wouldn't the body recognize it better? And Ray was like, no, it's the same compound. The body recognizes it the same. So this is like this anti-synthetic
Yeah.
mindset, which I think has some validity, but it's not always, it's not always harmful to take a synthetic thing. Like,
No.
I still haven't found out what methylene blue is extracted from. I never heard Ray say it. Like, where does methylene blue come from? It's
Exactly.
a super synthetic. Is it a tree bark? I don't know.
Clearly not squeezed from a fruit or anything, is it?
Right.
I know. I think that's a really good point on the synthetic thing. I think it depends what you're talking about, but also depends if the synthetic mimic they've created, is it identical to the natural? Then if it's the same molecule, then it's the same molecule. It's on the topic of progesterone too. People say, well, I took progesterone from my doctor, but they haven't been able to patent natural progesterone, and they haven't been able to mimic it. More often than not, it's progestin or progestine, which molecularly is a whole different beast, and they've actually been found to be estrogenic in nature, not progestogenic. So you've got to read the fine print, see how it's spelt. That can even be a giveaway. But yeah, gosh, if it's a synthetic compound, but they've managed to 100% mimic the natural molecule, then amazing.
Wait, did you say Progest E is not good? That's the first one I tried.
Oh, no, sorry. Yep. No, Progest E, the brand, the Kenogen is very good because it's molecularly, it's natural progesterone, molecularly identical to our own.
Oh,
but when you see on a pharmaceutical, if you see it spelt Progestin, Progestin, or Progestine, ENE, it's not true progesterone. It should say progesterone spelt exactly as it is. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah. It's the first one I tried, and I think I heard Ray in an interview or talking about megadosing it, and I think Danny's talked about that, like taking a quarter of a bottle or half a bottle or something.
Oh, yeah. It's good stuff.
I tried that; it felt pretty good.
It's just really good. No, it's wonderful stuff. And if you can rub it on your gums. If you have any left over in your fingers, put it around your eyes and keep those crow's feet away. It's very good on the skin too. You don't need that. You're young.
The one product we didn't cover yet is the Cascara, and I think I'll try it a few times because I don't have like constipation, but that could be very helpful. Not only for that, you talk about other benefits, right? For using Cascara.
Yeah. So that was another hard one to track down. It has to come from Italy because apparently the Italians do it best. So the Farmer Labor product, which is the one we managed to get, but it has to be very well aged, beyond a year apparently. And you can detect that by seeing, particularly in its colour, it should look very dark in colour. There are some products out there that say they're aged Cascara, but if they're a bit pale in colour, you know that they aren't actually sufficiently aged. So they do need to be aged because then if they're not, they're more of an irritant than, quite soothing on the bowel. But yeah, definitely when you take enough of it, they have a good laxative effect, again, without being quite irritating to the bowel wall. But even, beyond that, it works as it's a really good anti-inflammatory to the smooth muscle of the bowel, helps tone the muscle. It even has subtle prothyroid effects systemically. But so if you're not prone to constipation, I would say just take that little bit less. It could literally be a pinch that you might take every other day and you might see benefits from. But anyone who's not having at least one really complete, satisfying bowel emptying on a daily basis, it can be helpful, even if it's just, every now and then, or if you're traveling and more sedentary and you're not seeing bowel motions being that complete, then it's a helpful tool to keep in your toolkit, I guess.
It seems like it would be a anti-parasitic, right, or anti-pathogenic with how it tastes.
Antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory. It's the Imodin component is really an important part of it. I think it inhibits formation of nitric oxide, can prevent that reabsorption of endotoxin. So very helpful with skin quality as well. But it's, interesting substance, and it's, just a bark from a tree which has been ground down into a powder. It's not necessarily delicious, I wouldn't say. I don't know if you tasted it.
Yeah.
So some people like myself go, it's fine. I mean, God, I've dabbled in all manner of, boil up Chinese herbs back in the day and really gross things, and I find it absolutely fine. Some people almost call it pleasant. It's got that bitterness. My husband thinks it's evil dirt water, and he cries tears when I make him. But even Kitty has to shove it in little capsules because she can't do it. But I think they should just toughen up.
Well, yeah, I think it's a traditional Chinese medicine thing, right? Like the bitters, people often take Swedish bitters if they're drinking alcohol to help their liver out or something. But just tasting that bitter flavor, I think that increases like the secretion of digestive juices.
Yes, absolutely. And it's got that direct effect on the liver as well. So it's gosh, I was at uni doing Chinese medicine before I moved along to do more specific into nutrition, but we were boiling the raw herbs and all sorts of concoctions. My golly gosh. I mean, some real magic there when you go down that path. But compared to that, Cascara's fine. It's nothing.
Right. Yeah, I was going down that path for a while. I mean, I think there's something to Ayurveda and TCM, and you can integrate those things. My friend actually recommended working with one-on-one, like a TCM practitioner, so that they could prescribe you specific herbs instead of just going out and guessing which things you need to take.
It's a whole other language. I mean, we're literally learning about the entire human body from an entirely different perspective, meridians and, you go by energies, you talk about the liver, but you're not talking about the liver per se. You're talking about the energy of the liver and how it connects with, emotion. It's really fascinating. But I think for me, I mean, it was going to be a 4-year degree, and on the cusp of finishing the first year, they kept asking, do you want to focus on herbs or acupuncture? Herbs or acupuncture? You had to have your speciality. And for me, I was always getting the textbooks and looking up the back end about the dietary approach or the food therapy, and food was just my thing. And in the end, I don't know, my own conclusion, this is my own opinion, but for me, it was like, well, if someone's not eating right, just say they had a true deficiency of, I don't know, zinc, no amount of herbs or acupuncture are going to, fill that void of that zinc deficiency. If they're not eating good food, first and foremost, do the other thing, the add-ons really work as well as they could. And I've always been fascinated by nutrition. I was reading books on the topic since I was about 8 or 9. And, I actually I was in fashion design, my first university degree, but going home at night, pulling out books on nutrition. And one day hit me, I thought, maybe this is where I'm meant to be. So, I think TCM is magical and wonderful. But for me, I want to help people get to the basics first, get the basics right. Eat real food and I don't know, take away that unnecessary confusion that's come of the topic. I think these days people literally say, I don't know what to eat. I'm confused what to eat. And it's crazy. I mean, I think our great grandmothers would have just grown food, eaten when they were hungry, went to bed when sun went down. We just kind of went by feel a little bit, and everyone's stressed by the topic now. So I love pulling things back to the basics of food and what you can just do with what's already in your cupboard, and take away that unnecessary mental stress on the topic.
Yeah, those are really good points. There's not much you can do if you're retinol deficient or copper deficient or not getting enough protein or salt or really basic things.
Even just enough calories, first and foremost. It's amazing sometimes you work with some women and you're ready to just blow their mind with all this interesting stuff you've got to show them and teach them. And you look at what they're eating and they're trying to survive on 1,100 calories and you're like, how the hell? And they've got 3 kids and they're wondering why they're exhausted and they're emotional wreck and they've got PMS. And all you do to start with is just eating more food. And they go, oh, my God, you changed my life. I'm like, really? Really? So much more I could tell you. But just calories sometimes is the major shift. And then on top of that, there's so many more layers you can go. But yeah, it's just crazy. So many women are just, I suppose, disconnected from their instinct and even just their appetite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if it's like, a metabolic approved food in the community or whatever, but white rice works really well for us, like well cooked, and I've been using that with fish or steak or whatever, and with a lot of butter and salt.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a health educator on YouTube yesterday, as I often do, just to see what people were saying in the natural health community. Usually anti-sugar, usually anti-calories, and he's talking about like starch and rice and potatoes. Yeah. He's like, these just bloat you up. They're just fiber. That's all it is. And I'm like, dude, potatoes have vitamin C. Like, they're packed full of vitamin C. Like,
calcium and oh my God.
Yeah.
They're just fiber. And isn't white rice devoid of the fiber you're talking about? So how can you even put that in that? Oh, it's just, and you know what? It's probably my favorite line of anything I've read from all of Ray's articles was context is everything. It's just like, for me, sums up so many things. It's like when people say, what do you think of this food? Is this food bad? I go, hang on, who are we talking about? In whose gut are we talking about? And what is the state of their gut? And it's always contextual. And to say that, rice and potatoes just bloat everyone up, I'm like, well, no, if you don't have bacterial overgrowth right up through your intestine and you've got a fiery, efficient, gut, and your bowels move and they push things out and everything's working and your metabolism's high, you shouldn't bloat. You shouldn't bloat at all. It should just burn right through you really nicely. It's interesting. I think everyone looks, I suppose, externally for the advice on what is good and what should I be eating. But if they just slow down and just checked in when they're eating the food, if it makes them feel good, if there's no symptoms afterwards, no negative symptoms, they feel gentle warmth to their fingertips, they feel calm, they feel grounded, they sleep really well at night, pretty sure that food works for you.
I love that. Yeah, and same with supplements, right? Like, I took 6 capsules of niacinamide yesterday, like 3 grams, and I was like, geez, is it warm in here? It's like my body was just heating up quickly. And my metabolism.
Was it good heat? Did it feel like a grounded heat? Almost like stressful flush? No, it was good. Yeah. It
was a grounded, and I had food in me. So it just raised my body temp up a little bit.
Yeah, nice. This is it. It's those barometers. Actually, Dodie and I put together a little checklist. We worked on a lot of little handouts together for clients that, pulling our research together. And it was just more of a checklist that, yes, you can, use, there's oxygen meters, and definitely using thermometers is fantastic, and checking on pulse. And there's so much information you can collect from those sort of measures. But even more so, the things without any of those contraptions, we did a little checklist of how to check in and just see that your metabolism's in a good, steady place. Something you could, like a little list you could stick on your fridge, I suppose, and just eyeball off. I'll send you a link. I think I did an Instagram post on it. But things like taking your hand and putting your fingertips on your chest and noticing if the temperature difference is that great, like if it feels that cold against your warm chest, or whether it feels like everything's at a relatively even keel in terms of temperature. Checking the color of your nail beds. Are they bluish or purplish, or are they a nice, subtle pink? Just feeling where your breath's at. There's so many measures you can just observe on yourself in any given moment. And, you don't need labs externally, and you don't need too many of those other things where you require someone else to check in for you, that you can just check in on yourself. I sort of love that sort of thing where you have that level of control.
I love it. Yeah. And it's like free stuff. I think it was Broda Barnes that did the thyroid lake test, right? Where you like hit a certain spot and if the lake jumps, right? That's
hilarious. I find it so hard to do on myself though. You do need someone out there to bang you with the back of a knife or something and find the right spot. But yeah, exactly. Those sort of things. And I think physicians were far more, smart about it back in the day too. They really looked at symptoms, and they had these little tricks to check in on someone's health. They didn't need to send them off for tests and invasive, biopsies every other day. That they could figure things out, or without too many x-rays even. They could palpate, they could, sense someone's state of health and figure out what was going on with them without all those other methods. What do you think?
I love your approach, and I like earlier in the I think at the beginning you said regarding pregnancy that the doctors just test for everything and measure everything, and it's like this really neurotic approach, really parallel to the biohacking community, which I've been kind of in and out of, and I think there's a healthy kind of use of that stuff. But like the sleep trackers and I mean continuous blood glucose monitors that people keep in their arm for a week are like trending right now, or it's just a needle constantly in you. And there might be a place for that if someone's like really sick. I don't think the sugar part, but other stuff. But I like your point that simplicity is best. And I mean, for someone that's relatively healthy, I don't think there is much. I mean, I interviewed Jay Feldman recently, and he was saying that counting calories could be very helpful, whether someone wants to lose weight or gain weight. But I mean, I feel like I'm fine, so I don't count.
I'm a bit in that camp too. Like I get it if I'm working with someone, they're brand new, and you say to them, you get them to describe their diet and it sounds good, and you're like, are you eating enough of that? And they go, I'm eating plenty, but what's your perception of plenty compared to mine? I can see the validity of, track me a day just so I can quantify things. And then from there we can figure out, where the discrepancies are and what we can work on. But, and I see people recommending tracking, measuring all the time. If that works for you, sure. But I see it inducing stress in so many people when they have to live that way. And I think if you're reliant on the app or the screen or the numbers in front of you, rather than going by, I think I'm detecting my blood sugar starting to reduce. Quick, I need to sip on some juice. My adrenaline's up. I'm getting a bit shaky. I need some salt. Like giving them those tricks of what are the things to offset those stresses in that moment. If you just go by, I've got my macro numbers I've got to live towards. But who knows, on that day, some unprecedented stress occurs that you had no idea was going to hit you. In that moment, you're going to need far more calories and far more sugar to offset that stress. So just by going by your set calorie amounts you're trying to hit and your macro numbers, well, that's irrelevant because that day you need more, or next day you're more sedentary and you need less. So I think to perhaps get the information initially, it's a helpful tool, definitely. But over time, I try to free people of all those things so that they can eyeball their day instead. And they just know, you know what, I'm 100% sure I underate at breakfast and I get why I've got this crash happening at 3 p.m. and they can fix that up themselves without any technology whatsoever.
That's awesome. And irritability too, right? Like I always have trolls testing me, which I guess just comes with the territory. And it's like, I just laugh and block,
Laugh and block. That's a good approach. Well, the serotonin thing's interesting because, serotonin has always been promoted as the happy hormone, but I see it quite differently. And you see those people who have got that level of gut irritation and perhaps they're overproducing serotonin at the gut level. They often tend to be, more often than not, it's sort of your textbook high serotonin type is that, so they're irritated, they're quite reactive and, so-called intolerant to a whole lot of foods. They might get those really spasmodic bowels and the watery bowels and, things aren't quite settled when it comes to bowel motions. But they also tend to be irritated and they're snappy and they're short-tempered and kind of scary to be around at times. And more often than not, when I see that, it couples with all those things. Or the wife describes her husband and I kind of go, yep. And I ask her about his mood when he's a bit tired and it's exactly it. But it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's why I feel for retail workers, because every retail job I've had, I think 90% of my coworkers or managers had excess serotonin because they fit that description that you just described.
Interesting.
And it's like you can't, I think that's the benefit of working for yourself or working from home is that you don't have to deal with high serotonin people all day.
That's right. It's funny. Just recently, I was driving an area not far from us, and there was this new cafe that opened up. It's, scary time to open a cafe, God. But anyway, looked really pretty. Lots of plants growing in windows and everything. I guess it's trying to give off a happy vibe. The name of the cafe was Serotonin. and I get that from their perspective, they're trying to induce it because, serotonin's a happy hormone. Come to our happy cafe. And I thought, oh, God, what a terrible name for a cafe. I don't want to go there.
You should print out like Ray's serotonin article and like.
Oh, I know. Anonymously drop it there. I'm like, kill their business idea.
So I'm change their name. Yeah, that's funny.
You might want to reconsider.
Awesome, Emma. Well, we didn't get to the questions that people sent in, but I think we covered a lot. We went through each product, and if people want to learn, they could read through your blogs. I think you cover a lot of that in your blogs.
A lot of the questions I noticed, they're things I have covered in my articles. And then if anyone had further questions beyond what's there, just shoot me an email anytime. That's fine too, if I can provide any more clarity on anything. But
awesome.
Anything else that?
Well, yeah, I appreciate everything that you and Kitty are doing. I think you're helping a lot of people and simplifying and smoothing out the confusion. There's so much information overload in the natural health world, and I think it's just increasing every year.
Yeah.
So much fear-based stuff, and I just like that you really ground it out and help people with the basics and the foundation.
Well, I think I'm a different practitioner now to what I was before having kids. I think kids teach you a lot, but I used to be that one that if there was a new mum, she'd come to me and she was clearly struggling or tired, and I'd be really calm and say, you just got to do this. You got to cook this from scratch. You got to feed your baby this. It's got to be like that. It has to be organic from across town. You've got to hand make everything. And now I tend to be quite the opposite. In that situation I go, because now I've been through it all myself, and I go, oh, now I get it. Okay. That would only stress me out. So I hear myself saying more things like, can you get that pre-made? Can you pick up that already done? When things are around you that you have access to, are pretty good to start with. And if that woman could spend, 2 hours less in the kitchen that day and more time rolling around the floor with her baby, then I think that's better for everyone.
That's awesome. I fully agree. And I've been there where I would take my, back in my raw vegan days, it was like, I would strictly only eat homemade stuff. And I was like, bring my salad to dinner, if they didn't have anything I could eat and stuff. And I was so stressed, even though I felt, like I was being militant and I was diligent. I was eating tons of PUFAs, nuts and seeds.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like you're living to eat, not eating to live.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I want to be able to travel and eat the cuisines in all the different places and not be nitpicking and going, I'm sorry, can you change this and do this? Bring your own meal. I mean, that's not real freedom, is it?
Right. Yep. And that's why we have tools. I mean, like liver capsules. I think that's, I was into the superfood thing for a while, and it was like, raw chocolate. I was like making my own chocolate and putting like 20 herbs in it at home and stuff. And, then it was like spirulina or chlorella or blue-green algae. And then it took me, almost a decade to find out about organ meats and like especially liver and how powerful that can be. For all the hate that capsules get, I think my friend Josh Rubin, I've had on the show, he said he's seen people's iron panel results improve just with the liver capsules alone. So, that's something you can test and measure to verify that it's the same as the real thing, pretty much. So
absolutely. And there's nothing taken from it. It's not defatted, it's sort of
right.
And even in history, people have used dehydrated foods, haven't they, when they haven't been able to access things through certain seasons. But it was interesting. We all live and learn. I think I've been through all the same experiments on myself as you have. But you can only learn by, the results, can't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd be screwed up here if I wanted sugar in the winter, it would have to be potatoes or honey. if I couldn't buy rice at the store or whatever, or I'd have to freeze and, or dehydrate berries. That's probably the more sustainable way to do it, because we don't have sugar sources for 5-6 months where we live up here. So, I mean, if there weren't stores, so.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. And make the best of it.
Right.
It's not like you're in old times where you're having to live through a famine and through that situation. I mean, you're purely surviving, you're not thriving. But if you have the means, why not thrive all the time?
Yeah. C&H white sugar bags. I always stay stocked like 100 pounds or something.
Oh, nice. Oh, fantastic.
So what websites should people go to, Emma, to find your work? And
mine is just the nutritioncoach.com.au. I'm in Australia, so add the AU at the end. And the stuff I'm putting together with Kitty is Saturee, saturee.com.au, and you can find it on your website, can't you?
Yeah,
so
you'll
see my research there too. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your journey. And
no, thanks for having me. And it's lovely to chat.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk with you guys. And yeah, thanks so much. Stick around as I close out the show. Thanks, Emma.
I will. Thanks, Matt. Bye.
Well, that's it for today's show. I think Emma's a wealth of information, and the more women I interview that bring up the birth control pill, the more the dots connect for me. I really like when Emma said that taking the birth control for 10 to 15 years straight, to reverse that is going to take more than just a food-only approach, meaning supplementation. And all of that excess estrogen and iron needs to come out of the system. And a raw carrot a day to bind up the estrogen, or cooked mushrooms or bamboo shoots, like she talked about, the non-fermentable fibers, those will only take you so far. They're good. They're a good foundation. They're a good place to start before buying anything. But I think there's definitely a place for bioidentical progesterone therapy. And if someone's not comfortable with that, then just looking at mixed tocopherol vitamin E, which a lot of people don't know helps to regulate excess estrogen and actually protects the cells from being harmed by excess estrogen. It blew my mind when Emma said that women are being born estrogen dominant because of their mother and how she lived. And I see in the natural health community, when people talk about estrogen dominance, they usually go to supplements like DIM or recommend cruciferous vegetables, but they never talk about polyunsaturated fatty acids called PUFAs and how they are estrogenic. And a lot of these keto coaches that are raving about cruciferous vegetables and greens are also recommending nuts, seeds, and tons of fatty fish, cold water fish, and not telling people that all of those are estrogenic and they act how estrogen does, causing the cells to take up water and increasing growth and metastasis of tumors, while at the same time, long term, those PUFAs are actually complexing with the estrogen and aluminum and iron to form the terminal toxin, the primary marker of biological aging, called lipofuscin. So it's a cumulative effect. And from my research, vitamin E and niacinamide are excellent tools to use when rebalancing, even if you weren't on birth control. The amount of soy that I consumed growing up probably brought my estrogen to the levels equivalent to a woman taking birth control. And part of the reason why I got into health in the first place was I was tired of dealing with acne. And improving skin health, Emma actually has a great blog on her website, and she had a conversation with Georgi Dinkoff, and he said that The two biggest things internally that affect skin health are digestive health and hormonal health, and they're both directly linked. So in the mainstream alternative health community, there's this focus on gut health and sauerkraut and kombucha and jun and things that supposedly soothe the gut and increase intestinal function. But at the same time, they're recommending tons of PUFAs, nuts, seeds, legumes, and polyunsaturated fatty acids are really hard on the system, especially the intestines. I didn't start to see improvement in the quality of my skin until I increased animal product consumption, minimized the PUFAs, and cut out the wrong supplements and added in the right ones. A lot of supplements can throw your health out of balance. Ascorbic acid, zinc, iron, omega-3s, and the more controversial one, which I think is oral D3 consumption. Vitamins and minerals are on a seesaw, and when you increase one, you decrease another one. So it's really important to know that vitamin E is on a seesaw with PUFAs, and a lot of people know zinc is on a seesaw with copper. So if you're supplementing zinc every day, then you're depleting your copper. But what's also depleting your copper is iron overload. And it's even worse if someone's supplementing zinc and iron. They're really decreasing their body's ability to utilize oxygen. And when that happens, the body can't heal. So that's why I think Saturee supplements that they provide, especially the freeze-dried liver, most of the beef liver capsules on the market are desiccated, but theirs is actually freeze-dried. And so Emma told me that the vitamin A is not denatured because of that. And as we talked about in the show, I think the capsules are pretty close, if not nearly identical to actual whole beef liver. And the proof is in the pudding being the Full Monty iron panel, seeing the levels normalize after consuming beef liver capsules. So a lot of us, like myself, was not raised eating organ meats unless you're raised in another country or on a farm, but it's not common that we were raised eating liver and onions. So I think the capsules and supplements can be very helpful. And I enjoyed listening to Emma talk about casein. I'm going to start integrating that more into my pancakes and mixing it into the different things that I make. I think that's an overlooked nutrient, especially if someone's dealing with sleep issues or just has extra stress. We have all of the tools available to help mitigate it. So I'll put the link below to Saturee, and if you order through me, you'll save 5% on non-subscription products. And also put the link below to Emma's website. That's thenutritioncoach.com.au. Her blog is awesome. I really enjoyed reading her interview with a red light therapy expert. So I think red light therapy is now seen as like another trend, a fad, a biohacking thing. But for me, especially in the winter where it could just be overcast up here in Idaho for several weeks at a time, it truly is a game changer to supplement light. And you could find my work at matt-blackburn.com. I have blogs, recipes, and all of my recommended products up there, including my favorite red light therapy company, and that is Gemba Red. Andrew's always coming out with cool new products. He just released a night light, a little $29 red night light that you can put in your bathroom. And I've really been enjoying that, especially being off grid. It only uses half a watt, so it's barely anything. And I've also been enjoying the Gemba Red Beacon, It's a tabletop design with a little stand that has 4 frequencies, 4 wavelengths built in: 630, 660, 830, and 950. Low flicker, almost no EMFs, no fans, and really affordable. A lot of these companies mark up red light therapy devices to an insane level, and I like that Andrew keeps it affordable. And if you use the discount code Blackburn, you actually save 10% on his products. You could eat whole food vitamin C for copper. You can take your beef liver. You can eat your bee pollen and get copper from multiple different sources. But why not do it all plus red light therapy, which acts as a copper surrogate? So that means in a state of copper deficiency, your body will actually be able to function how it should just with the stimulus of a red light therapy device. So once again, this is not biohacking. It's not just a 1% benefit. It's way more than that. And the red light is actually acting to increase the efficiency of your engines, your mitochondria. So it's not only feeding energy directly to your cells, but it's souping up the engine so that your energy efficiency is increased. And my products can be found at mitolife.co. As of this recording, most of the products are in stock. People have really been loving the Pure Shilajit tablets. I just updated the heavy metal lab results for that product, and it was super low, lower than a lot of other brands. And I posted a video on the Panacea product page if you want to get more details about that. And people ask, why does Shilajit even have heavy metals? Well, it's just the nature of the substance. It's almost the whole periodic table, has a lot of trace elements in it, ones that we're not getting anymore in our food supply. And most importantly, they're carbon bonded. So they're in their organic form, the perfect ratios with fulvic acid. So the body can utilize what it needs and excrete what it doesn't. It's a whole food supplement. So that's a good way to think about it. And also want to mention, I have a private YouTube that's really affordable. It's called the Mitolife Academy. And if you want to dive deeper and gain access to some behind the scenes content, some of it's too controversial for the public. We know that we're in like a censorship world now. And so a lot of us are just going underground to be able to share information freely, especially as it relates to our health. So there's 3 tiers you can sign up with: basic for $10 a month, intermediate for $15 a month, and advanced for $25 a month. For the basic membership, you get 2 videos and a live Q&A once a month where you can ask me anything. Usually that's been the last week of the month because I've been so busy moving. Intermediate, you get those 2 videos plus a 3rd video, and then the advanced, you get 4 videos a month with the live Q&A. So I think it's affordable. Even if you just do the basic, you'll gain access to some good information, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So check that out. I'll put the link below if you're interested in joining, and stay supercharged.